Picture the oldest holy thing you can think of: a temple, an altar, a circle of people at night waiting for something. Now look at what's in their hands: a cup, a bowl of smoke, a root ground into paste, a mushroom. They're about to take it, all of them, the priest first. And in a few minutes the walls will breathe and the dead will speak, and God, whatever they call God, will arrive in the room. This is not a few strange cults on the edge of history. This is the center. For thousands of years, on every inhabited continent, this is how human beings went to meet the divine. They did not pray their way there. They drank it, smoked it, swallowed it. You probably think of drugs and religion as opposites. One is sacred, the other is the thing sermons warn you about. For most of human history, they were the same thing. Not a sin against the gods, the doorway to them. And here's the part that should unsettle you a little. Before we even get to the evidence, this was not one culture. It was not one accident in one corner of the map. It happened in India and in China, in Greece and in the far north of Europe, in the rainforests of Central Africa, and across the whole of the Americas. People who had never met, who shared no language and no God, reached for the same idea. That to touch the divine, you first had to leave your ordinary mind behind. And they all found chemicals that would take them. Start with one we can prove with chemistry, because the residue is still there. In the mountains of western China, at a burial ground called Jirzankal, archaeologists opened the tombs from around 2,500 years ago and found wooden braziers. Inside them, burnt stones, and on the stones, the chemical signature of cannabis. Not the weak hemp grown for rope. This plant had high levels of the compound that alters the mind. Someone chose it for that. They buried it in a sealed tomb with a harp playing to send the smoke up with the dead. Go west to India and you find it written down rather than buried. The oldest sacred texts of the subcontinent, the Vedas, sing to a drink called Soma. Over 1,000 verses, hymns to a pressed plant that priests drank to see gods and become, in their own words, immortal. Scholars have argued for a century about which plant it is. They have never doubted the religion was built around drinking it. Go to Greece. For 2,000 years, the most respected ritual in the ancient world was held at Eleusis. They drank a brew called kykeon, and what they saw in the hall was said to remove the fear of death itself. We now have physical evidence of what was in the cup. At a related sanctuary, archaeologists found ergot, the fungus LSD is later derived from, in a ritual vessel and in the teeth of a man who drank it. It reached the far north too. In Denmark, a high-ranking priestess of the Old Norse world was buried with a pouch of henbane seeds, a plant whose smoke bends perception and opens the door to a trance. There is no word for sober in Old Norse. The closest they had meant simply undrunk. Now the two places the old textbooks always left out. In the rainforests of Central Africa, the Bwiti take the root of iboga plant, a large dose, and initiates are not considered full members of the faith until they have taken it and met, directly, the gods and the ancestors. The visions can last for days. The soul, they say, leaves the body and walks in the land of the dead. And across the ocean in the Americas, this reached its fullest flower. The Aztecs ate a sacred mushroom in their holiest rites. We know psilocybin, the compound that makes it visionary, was the point. We know because of the name they gave it. They called it Tionankatl. It translates almost exactly as the flesh of the gods. Think about that. A people on the far side of an ocean who could not have heard word of any of this looked at a small brown mushroom and called it the flesh of the gods. The same instinct, the same doorway, the same chemical key. Mushroom stones used in these rites have been found that are over 3,000 years old. This is not a footnote to human religion. For most of the time there have been humans, it was the main event. So what happened? If this was everywhere, if it was the beating heart of how people met their gods, why does it feel strange and forbidding to you now? Somewhere along the way, the door was closed on purpose. Watch it happen in the record. In early Islam, wine begins as a gift. One of the first mentions in the Quran calls intoxicating drink one of the signs of God's grace. The ban came later in stages, written into the scripture over time, until the thing that was once a sign of grace became forbidden. Buddhism made it a rule. One of the 5 core precepts a lay follower takes is to abstain from intoxicants, because they cloud the mind, and a clouded mind cannot see clearly enough to wake up. In Europe, as the new faith spread, the old brewing herbs, the henbane and the rest, were slowly pushed out of the drink and into darker territory. The same plants that once carried the priestess to the spirit world became, a few centuries later, the witch's poison, the flying ointment, the thing you could be burned for. A pattern repeats across faith after faith. The altered state stops being the path to God. It becomes the thing that pulls you away from God. And the clear, sober, ordinary mind, the one your ancestors thought of as the everyday mind, the lower one, gets crowned as the holy one instead. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you the visions were real, that the mushroom truly held a god. I can't know that, and neither could they. And I'm not telling you to go and take anything. That is not what this is. Here's the thing, the one worth carrying out of this. The line you feel, the one that puts the sober mind on the side of the sacred and the altered mind on the side of the sin, feels ancient. It feels like it was always there, like it came from the nature of things. It did not. It was drawn by specific people in specific centuries for reasons that were sometimes holy and sometimes about power and sometimes about a state wanting its citizens clear-eyed and countable. For most of human history, the line ran the other way. You did not choose where that line sits. You were born after it was already drawn, and you inherited the feeling that it is simply true. That's the thing to notice, not which side is right. Just that the deepest, most obvious, most natural instinct you have about this, the one that feels like it comes from God, came from people. And things that were drawn by people can be looked at with clear eyes and understood, which is its own kind of sober. Thank you for watching. Be sure to follow the channel for more.